without further ado, KJ,
Thank
tell
you.
you about the sustainable supplier guidelines.
Thank you, Anna.
Everybody, please, everybody, give her
Oh, you're a card. Elizabeth's going to tell you about, she has a new video out that she's starring in. I'll keep you on your toes. She'll tell you about that.
Okay.
Yeah, good. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about sustainable purchasing. I think with all of you, when we initially did our assessments, we really asked a lot of questions about that. Because it's such a great way to influence sustainability. And why would it be? Why is sustainable purchasing a great way to influence sustainability?
We force vendors, and if you have that power,
Yep.
to make different choices.
Correct. Correct. What else?
It's the start of the process, so if you can put your, whatever you buy in sustainable packaging, then it flows down through the process.
Exactly.
It makes it easier down the road.
Makes it easier down the road, yeah. And what company that has a big name has been instrumental in this field?
Walmart.
Good. Gold star for you. And why have they been so instrumental? What do you know about them?
Well, therefore, like, weren't they the ones who said, we're only selling concentrated detergents, for example, we should cut packaging by a factor of 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have such buying power, they can shift the entire industry immediately.
You're hitting it. So when Walmart said, hey, okay, we don't want to be now the worst company on the list for sustainability. We want to be the best. Where is our biggest leverage point? Because we're Walmart, and where do we even start? And so there are sustainability consultants that came in and said, where is your biggest leverage point? And through lots of discussion, and they said their biggest leverage point was their supply chain. And they had a lot of leverage that way, not only nationally, but globally. And so they thought, heck, if we made one guideline and that filtered down, right, what the effect could be, right? And so that was Walmart in that way has changed this field dramatically. The first thing they said, without really having supplier guidelines, is each vendor had to reduce their packaging by 25%. And you had 5 years to do it. But as a manufacturer, are you going to change just your product for Walmart, or are you going to change it for everybody? You change it for everybody, right? So huge impact we saw in the field. And obviously then they came out with a huge set of guidelines in purchasing, which is really where this whole field took off in terms of sustainable purchasing and sustainable supply chain. And so they've really been the lead in that, but a lot of companies have taken it. So it is a huge impact for you to make up with your businesses as well as make down. And so what we want to talk a little bit about today is a few things. One, I want to talk a little bit about the guidelines. So each of you, we kind of talked about guidelines. Green Star Business Club has some sample guidelines for you. I want to talk a little bit about what that means. Next, I want to talk a little bit, when we talk about decision criteria, when we're making decisions, it's like the top 4 decision criteria to kind of make it easy. Like, what are we looking for when we're looking for sustainable purchasing? Then I want to get into some specific criteria. We're going to talk about some specific groups of products that most of you purchase. You know, food, office furniture, office supplies, cleaning products. What does it mean to purchase those sustainability, and what logos and certifications are we looking for? Yeah. And then how do you roll this out? You know, what does that look like to do that? So that's kind of the game plan of what I want to cover today for you. So I'm going to have you with a few people, I want to get you in groups of 3s, talk initially just about supplier guidelines. Because again, this is a big recommendation we've given every one of you on supplier guidelines. And so first I want you to talk about what is the advantage of documenting it? Why have we even suggested or recommended that? What do you think the purpose of that is? And then internally, who needs to understand these guidelines? And then obviously on the other side, externally, how do you message this appropriately to vendors, right? We don't want to make people upset or give them the message we're not wanting to work with them, but how do we do that? So those are the 3 questions. I want you to first talk about the 3 groups, and then we'll roll it up. So first, what did you come up with in your discussion of the purpose of having guidelines? What is the purpose of that? Benefit of it?
I like how it shines a light upon things. which has the side effect of raising awareness
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
I know when I'm documenting something, I have to think through what I'm doing, and then I get much more connected to the words.
Yeah, I like it. So just bring awareness to it, even to your staff. What else?
Consistency.
Consistency. Yeah, and what way?
In holding to your commitment,
Yeah,
for being green.
yeah, I like that. Even to your commitment of what you want to do. Yes, Sarah, for you?
That's what I was gonna say. So if things internally change or vendors change or you have new vendors, it's keeping that standard, making sure that it stays, making sure that it goes across and it doesn't fall through.
Right. Good. And so once we have these documented, let's just say we have the internal ones, who do you message this to in your organization? When that came up, who does that go to?
Well, if we get it from Crystal, then we just do whatever we
But obviously there's some key purchasing people in this room, right? And so that function, what,
I think it's purchasing, yeah, definitely another part of it for sure is the receiving department. So not only are you, letting your vendors know through the purchasing department, but then the person who's actually receiving it can then let you know, hey, that box hasn't changed, but we're still getting the, the plastic covering
Love that.
on whatever.
Right.
And then they can let you know, and like I said, I even have, an inspection process currently, so, if we get glass, we would reject it or something like that.
Right.
We're on QC hold.
Yeah. That's a really good point. It's not only the front end, but the back end of what you receive. I think that's a great point. My guideline on this is anybody who has a credit card for the company should have these guidelines. If you can purchase for the organization, then you need to have guidelines on them, whatever that is. And it's not absolute, right? And so the guidelines really scale. Like the guidelines we gave you is a real good template. We encourage you to shift and alter it as you need to in terms of your organization. And did we give you a copy of the guidelines, Bob?
Margaret?
Did we give you a copy?
Not yet.
Not yet, so we may need to do that. It's really context of the kind of business you're in. Like obviously in food and food manufacturing, there's a lot more you have to do with that, right? It's much more complicated that you have to do and how do you integrate it.
I was going to suggest that our
Yep.
quality department, our R&D, as they're sourcing new ingredients,
Yep.
they would be key people.
Huge, right? Yeah. But when you're dealing with the service industry, right, the creative arts, what Vermilion does in terms of branding and materials and marketing and all that kind of stuff, it's a little different, right? So that's where, we encourage you to take the template and tweak it for you in terms of what you guys do and how you operate. Yeah,
Right,
Sarah. Go to Sarah and then Bob.
I wanted to say also internally, anybody who would like to market that fact that you do have sustainability guidelines or that you do care what products you're using would also need access to that information.
Yeah. Say that, was that a question?
No, so like marketing and sustainability people would also be a good,
I would agree.
yeah.
I would agree. Bob, comment?
I was just saying, this whole process makes you look for more sustainable solutions. Like
Yes.
Margaret was just saying she went on a press check, a big printer up in Loveland for this catalog we print 3 times a year. And it turns out they've got a new machine that has a quarter of the paper waste and much less toxicity to the environment and everything. And looking for that and then sharing that information with everybody in the company saying, hey everybody, I found a better source, let's use this. But I think that's, how many times do we sit down and say, all right, let's research this, but if you're aware of what's going on, it may be that's the best way to find these things out.
Right, and the criterion and considerations, right? And that's what we want to do, right? And then in terms of messaging this externally to suppliers, what was the conversation around that? Third question. Yeah.
Boulder Brands has what we call our brand guardrails,
Uh-huh.
and it's a publicly disseminated document for each of the brands under the Boulder Brands umbrella
Yeah.
that we say we do not allow these certain ingredients and non-GMO, things like that, and we share that openly.
Yeah, great. And it does help, right, in terms of you sourcing and doing things right. So some of this is contextually depending, like Spark, companies that really use it, like Spark Fun and obviously the food companies, you guys in building materials, I think. But maybe for Shining Mountain and for Vermilion, just because of what you do, it's probably not as necessary, right? just because you're more reactive to the market. So it may not be as necessary in your world, but if you're doing a lot of sourcing and part of what you do is manufacturing or making something, you usually want to message it out if you can, or have it available, at least on your website, to let vendors know what your conditions are. Yeah, good. So as we move along, and we talk about some other things, again, some of we gave you a template. What I want you to kind of hear for are what are specific things as it relates to your business, your company, that you would want to add into that, right? Again, and make them more your own for your business and what you do. So let's go to green claims. When we say green claims, what does that even mean to you?
Fraud.
Fraud. How about green logos? Let's go green certifications, green logos, green claims. What is
Feel good
that?
about buying, if it says, any of those things, say, oh, I'm gonna buy that, that's great.
And what conjures, like, give me a name of a green logo or a claim that you know of.
EcoCycle.
Well-
It's a very fun, famous logo.
Well, essentially EcoCycle, even though it's a great brand name, it's not necessarily a claim or a certification. What would be a claim?
Oh, you think like
Like-
organic or non-GMO?
Correct. Organic or non-GMO. Matt, what were you
I was
going
gonna
to say?
say B Corp.
B Corp, that would be one, right? And tell people what B Corp is.
Benefits Corporation, so it's basically a certification that kind of looks at your whole supply chain, is that right?
Yeah, good. And non-GMO, VJ, tell us what non-GMO means.
Basically, that's making sure that your food has not been genetically modified, through bioengineering.
Right. And the key words you both used, ensure, right? Make sure. So some of this green claims, green logos is about ensuring that a product or service is a certain way. And why would that be important, especially in the sustainability space? Why do we even have them?
Well, for example, for, organic.
Yeah.
There's certain standards you have to have.
Right.
With, you're not allowed to have pesticides, you're not allowed to have, this and that
Right.
in your food.
Right.
Is the contaminants. So you know that that level has been reached.
So let's say you say you're still organic, but you don't have the label organic.
Well,
Why even have USDA organic on it? What's the purpose?
I think it's a selling point more than anything, really. For
So it's a selling point, but why is it a selling point?
It also goes back, what did you say, fraud?
Yeah,
Because you're saying what we're claiming is legit.
correct.
People use the word all natural, which is the
Correct.
most overused term in food,
Right.
which doesn't mean anything.
And so when did we see a lot of these green seal certifications start coming out?
When people got more interested in
Right, it's about 20 years ago, right? We started seeing more. How many green seals and certifications do we have right now?
Lots.
some.
Hundreds.
450 right now. So there's a lot, and part of it is about the trust, consumer trust. And so we got into this greenwashing, especially it really happened in the natural foods industry, as you just said you were natural, but natural really wasn't a certification or a claim, it was a word. And so people started saying we're natural this and natural that, but then they found out they weren't natural, or what does natural mean to you versus somebody else. So part of this was trying to get greenwashing and unsubstantiated claims, right, to give trust back to the consumer. So when we look at that, this was a study done by BBMG. They're a communications company out of Chicago. They've done a lot of work in this space on green marketing and green communications. Have you heard of them, Bob? BBMG?
No. What is it again? BBMG?
BBMG, they're a communications company in Chicago, but they've done a lot of good research in terms of green communications and things. You and I will talk later. They have some good reports out that I think you're going to find interesting. But this is one they did. So they basically went out and did a whole study and found out what you were familiar with. So this score, this percentage score is how familiar you were with the particular certification or logo up there. So you see the high ones over there and then the lower ones. So just by first glance, and obviously these were just the top one-sided, there's 450, right? So these were just the top one-sided, this familiarity. based on just what you see, what does this tell you?
Most people don't recognize anything.
How many logos or certifications are above 50%? 3. And here's your real test question. There's one of these logos not like the others because it's really not a claim. And which one is that?
Is that Energy Star?
One of these logos is not really a claim. Which one is it? Recyclable. Which one, Elizabeth?
Recyclable.
Yeah, this one right here, which is the top #1 recognized one, is not really a claim. The recycle logo only means either the type of resin used or a type of recycled content. It's really more an ingredient factor, not necessarily a claim. It's not claiming or certifying anything, but it's the most recognizable from a green sustainability aspect, right? So that one, let's just take that out, only really leaves the 2 government ones as the most recognizable claims, right? So, what does that mean for you and your business? And so why I bring that up is we have to start with the premise that your people in your company don't know about green seals or certifications or claims. That's where we have to start, right? That we need to educate them on that. And that's part of what we want to talk about today is what claims and certifications make sense with what products and what are the most frequent. The second part is you have to meet a certain set of criteria in order to do the third-party claims. So what we're going to talk today more about is the third-party claims. We're not really going to talk about the first-party claims. And usually, I'm not skeptical of the other two, it just is context of understanding them, right? And so that's where I think some of the greenwashing came in, is some companies just claiming, oh, we're green, but no really set independent verification of that. So in trying to help staff think of this easily, this is a matrix that I have, you kind of seen some of these words, but kind of a matrix I like to make it easier. We're really looking at 4 different decision criteria. Because once we get to the list I'm going to show you for each product of all the different conditions, it can become overwhelming is what I find when I start educating people about this. But if I can really just say there's 4 things you're looking for. The first thing you're looking for is to avoiding things like toxic chemicals, avoiding things like packaging, avoiding things that if we don't have to buy it, let's not. So just if we don't have to get it, let's not get it, right? Whatever that is to reduce, right? Then we go to the reduction. Reduction of packaging, reduction of materials, finding things in bulk packaging, doing things that are refillable, whatever I can do to reduce, right? Whatever quantity. Then I go to the framework of reusing. So I could buy a disposable, or I could buy something that I reuse all the time. That's a better option, right? If I can buy something that I could repair, so that once it breaks I don't have to just get rid of it, I could fix it, and it could be fixed economically, that's a better option. So looking at the things that you could reuse again and then again is another filter. And then the last one is the recyclability. Recyclability at the end of life, recycled content that it's made of, recycled materials, even in the manufacturing process. So that has helped people kind of wrap around. There's really 4 decisions I'm looking at as to not make it too complicated. Sometimes you can set up your guidelines that way if you want. Sometimes it's just messaging it that way. We're only really looking at 4 decision criteria, and then you customize that with your business, right? Like with Boulder Brands, you customize it because you're dealing with food. Obviously, Sparkfun, you kind of customize it to you. So it's one way to look at it and simplify it. Okay, so let's look at the different products that we have. Office supplies and paper. So give me an example of an office supply that maybe you guys have purchased before and then you switched because you saw something that might be more green or more sustainable. Sarah?
So before I got to Sparkfun, we had chosen some office supplies for like paper and paper towels, toilet paper, all that stuff. And it said like eco logo on it. And at first I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when I actually looked into it, I realized I had no idea what that actually meant. And I think that it meant that they didn't use a certain bleaching product, but it didn't have anything about like post-consumer recycling paper, or if it wasn't like virgin paper.
Right.
So I kind of decided that we should probably switch from the eco logo stuff to something that was better certified or more recycled.
Great example where you kind of investigated a little bit more of what you meant. Right. So in office supplies, the criteria that we're looking for is definitely materials made of recycled content in some way. Especially a lot of office supplies are really made of plastic, a lot of plastic. So some it's unavoidable, but at least we can find stuff that's post-consumer waste or recyclable plastic that has preference in terms of sustainable purchasing. Bulk packaging, I know Shining Mountain, you guys are doing a lot that way of trying to buy more in bulk, right, Ally? In terms of getting, they have obviously the school and all these teachers and everybody needs supplies. This is a big one for you. And so as opposed to each teacher doing their own thing, kind of consolidating, getting one thing, which I think helps. The recyclable or compostable packaging. Compostable packaging with office supplies is really hard to come by. It's really if you can find it recyclable, which is also hard to come by because it's all in this type of packaging, right? Most deal that is not recyclable, right? Refillable, reusable, and non-toxic in low order. So let's look at the certifications. These are the most common ones with office supplies. FSC, what do you know about FSC? What does that mean? Bob?
I think it's the tree farms that have been certified that they're, what would I say, they're not virgin, well, they might be virgin,
Yeah.
but they're farmed rather than just clear cutting big forests.
Correct. It's sustainable forestry, right? It's intended to be cut that way, and there's practices around that. Yeah, so FSC is kind of the big lead in any wood product sustainable forestry. And you're right, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not virgin. But most of the time it is. So FSC only means it's sustainable forestry, and the practices do. Good. Rainforest Alliance, what does that mean? Anybody on that
Probably
one?
something to limit clear cutting of the rainforest.
Right, so this gets into wood and somewhere, the rainforest is a number of practices. It's definitely certification on forest, which it gets into sustainable forest practices, especially for rainforest types of forests versus forests that we have here in North America. But they also get into land issues as well as community issues. So they're looking at, somebody's not going into the Brazilian rainforest and just clear cutting down, that there's certain practices and criteria that you have to do. Again, the wood's still coming from a rainforest, right? So that's the key. It's just that it had some more criteria in terms of practices on that.
Question?
Yeah,
That one's with food and stuff that comes from the rainforest. as well.
correct.
Okay.
So that is multi. It's with any wood products, and it is also food products. A lot of the chocolate, cocoa,
Yeah.
right? Things that are more in some of those regions, hotter climates. Yeah, good, Sarah. This one, it's hard to see, but this is chlorine-free. Mainly used probably with what product? Paper, right? So anything that's non-chlorine based is good. And then SCS certified. Anybody heard that?
Well, SCS is our certification body for SQF.
Yeah, it
But
is.
I would assume that they just have, much like our SQF, they have standards of what you have to apply by. You have to be a certain percentage of, recyclable, certain percentage of, non-virgin, and then they basically third-party audit to you to ensure that you are following and doing what you're saying you're doing.
Great. Scientific certification solutions, they're massive. They do tons of certification, and they've gotten kind of in this green realm. Here's the thing, you'll kind of see logos that look like this. You always see SCS, and they're on multiple different products. So they'll all mean a little different thing on different products, just like you said, BJ. So if it's on cleaning products, it'll mean biodegradability, right? If you see it on office supplies, it'll usually mean recyclability or content. You see it on some other products, it means scientifically, was it the same quality or better as other products in that realm? Could mean that. So they're pretty well respected, I will give them that. My only quandary with them is it's still, they'll have different types of logos for different type of products, but unless you know, it's hard to know what it really means. Just like you were saying, like, yeah, it's on there, but what does it really mean for this type of product? But they are well respected. For whatever they do certify, they are well respected in that space. Good. So these are the most common ones in terms of office supplies to look for. And obviously knowing the recycled content. But again, that's not necessarily a logo. That should really just be on the package of what it is. Okay, let's go to electronics and appliances. Most of you are really buying computers, except for our lovely Spark friends over there. So, Sarah, tell me a little bit about what you guys look for in terms of buying electronics and appliances. Like, what kind of criteria are you guys looking for?
Well, almost everything we buy is Energy Star certified.
Good.
We want to make sure that it turns off when nobody's around. We want to make sure that we can mess with its settings to have the lowest paper settings, so can print on both sides, can use less printer ink, can be hooked up to all of the computers. So instead of having a printer for every person, you have a printer in the area, and there's just one of them per whole work area. So just really user friendliness and being able to change the settings ourselves to make it what we want it to be.
Nicely done. Beautifully done, yeah? And so let's talk about the logos a little bit. You said Energy Star. What does Energy Star actually mean?
It's more of a certification of what the thing can do. So specifically, we buy a lot of printers,
Yeah.
and just desktop computers. And it's just saying that it can do those things like double-sided printers. It can email you a copy as opposed to printing out a copy. It can connect with other things. It can be tweaked with that kind of thing. And I am not sure about its how it's built with its electronics and its parts, so I don't know about that.
So, right, so that's the distinction. Energy only means the amount of energy used, and here where Energy Star is going to have a little bit of a problem. They did the initial rating on, at one point there was let's just say 10 years ago, a certain amount of energy used by, let's say, the computer industry. And they said you could be Energy Star approved if you reduce that energy consumption by 25%. The good news was most of all the electronics, the big ones, did that. But now there's no incentive to go better. Does that make sense? You can still say Energy Star based on the standard they did. So that's one thing the EPA is looking at, but it's government, so it takes forever, right? But just realize that yes, we want Energy Star, but it's just really meaning a percentage of energy off a certain baseline. And each product category was different. So computers was 25%, but printers were different, appliances were different, everything was different. But we still want Energy Star.
How long ago did you say that was?
Probably about, the last time they readjusted was about 10 years ago. Which is first in the computer industry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then EPAT, no worries, Mark, no worries. We'll get you a copy of this, thank you so much. EPAT relates more to the manufacturing process that you were talking about, Sarah. EPAT is, this is one I really like to see because it does two things. It's looking more at the design of the product and the sustainability criteria of the design. It looks at, there are 23 components. And it also looks at the recyclability of the product after its useful life. So in terms of how easily it's recyclable and taken apart and things like that. So I like to see that one a lot on water sense is similar to energy in terms of a certain reduced amount of water, but same thing. They set a standard based on what was the industry standard and it's going below that and they haven't reset the standard in a while. So still we want water sense types of things, but we want them to be better. Okay, cleaning products. I know a lot of you, we talked about cleaning products. So in some of those considerations, looking at the biodegradableness of it, now that's what this certification does. SCSC here, in this case, on cleaning products, only is really relating to the biodegradability. Thank you. So, it still could have some icky stuff in it, but do things kind of, so it's not necessary to say it's completely green, that's just one framework of it. In terms of ingredients, these are the things that we look for really in the spec sheets. So some of you, we asked to see spec sheets of cleaning things. We want to start seeing the things that are non-toxic. We want to see things that are below a certain pH, no VOCs, low in sodium. So these are kind of some of the things that we're looking for when we look at those spec sheets. Obviously recyclable packaging, concentrated, meaning less packaging, that if they have sheets, that's key, and not tested on animals. And so this one is the one also that I like to see, not tested on animals. Not as widely used as this one, but still like to see it. Green Seal. Green Seal is good. However, the biggest component of Green Seal is, does the product clean as well or better than your other products? So they do have some criteria of some, non-toxic and stuff, but it's not really certifying that all the ingredients in that particular product are 100%, natural in that way. They're just saying that if the manufacturer claimed it, it's still a good product against other ones. Bio-based is another one, that's by USDA. Again, that kind of has the same meaning as that. And then designed for the environment by the EPA, that's come out. Anybody know what that means? Just means non-toxic in terms of air quality. All that means. So you're not getting the vapors and some of the VOCs. So that's all that means. Okay? So those are the ones I usually see on the cleaning products. Okay. Office furniture.
That one doesn't regulate phosphate and
This one,
sodium as well?
Design for the Environment?
Yeah.
I'm not absolutely sure on that.
Okay.
Which, is that your recollection?
I wouldn't know, but I would think that it would also have to deal with sodium and phosphate, just specifically.
We should look that up. I know the big criteria for that is really air quality, meaning what's the vapors coming
Yeah.
out. But I'm going to your assumption of those kinds of things, right, right, cause that. We'll have to look that up. Yeah, don't know that offhand. Office furniture. So some of you, I think Shiny Mountain we talked about because you have all these desks and things. So one thing looking for is, again, repairability of that. Using second-hand, if you can find good quality, depending on what it is. Things that are really durable, obviously certified wood. So we have the FSC again. Cradle to Cradle, anybody know what that is? Anybody seen that? So Cradle to Cradle was actually a book written by two engineers who were into manufacturing, and it's a whole life cycle design process, and they actually have gone out and really done a certification with manufactured products in particular, to ensure that from the start of sourcing all the way to the end of the product has certain criteria in it, and so now you can get certified in terms of the manufacturing process. So again, more relational to you, for you guys in terms of buying it. I'm starting to see it more on furniture products only because they've targeted that industry a lot, especially because they're wanting to be in the LEED certified group. So this certification is targeting more things in buildings. So you guys are probably going to maybe see it a little bit more too, depending on what you're doing. Green Guard, same thing, only really measuring indoor air quality of things. Now they are recommended by LEED, and so that you do see it. But again, it doesn't mean all the ingredients are great or are not non-toxic. Just means the quality of the emissions is low. And then LEED essentially did their own kind of certification of products, especially as it relates to the green building industry and products that you guys have. So they haven't done everything, but that's kind of their mode that they're going to, is they want to get pretty immersed in the building construction industry, and everything that would be okay to be in a LEED certified building, they want to get their logo on. But it costs a lot of money. And the last one, food. So those are the, some of this, obviously living in Boulder, we know a lot of that in terms of some of the food that we're looking for. Let's go to the labels. USDA organic, non-GMO, those are pretty popular. Food Alliance, you guys heard of Food Alliance? Yeah. Food Alliance is kind of three-pronged. One, it's really farming practices. Two, it's labor practices. And three, it's land and environmental practices, meaning even where your farm is. And so they're kind of a bigger one. Fair trade, anybody know what that means?
I do a lot of fair trade when I was working with Mahana.
Yeah.
And working with agave farms, making sure that they're getting a fair, they're not getting ripped off.
Right, exactly.
For lack of better words.
Yeah, exactly. It's just making sure the labor or wherever you're getting that is an equitable wage. Right, good. Humane, certified humane,
So,
really dealing with farm animals, ensuring, farms are well kept, no antibiotics, no inhumane treatment, even in the way, I hate to say it, of how they kill the animal is in a certain way. And so that's what we want to see on usually animal product types of things. And then Marine Stewardship Council is really governing what? Fish, fisheries, right? In terms of what type of fish and kinds of things. You're starting to see that more in Whole Foods. Okay, so those are the food products there. So with each of these categories, as you can see, some of them apply to some of your organizations, some of them not as much. It's kind of what I'm wanting you to do is to take those guidelines and go, okay, which ones do we do? Where do we want to, what choices do you want to make, right? And then what kinds of certifications and logos do you want to look for and start educating your staff on, right? Because you can't do everything. Even the ones I gave you that are still narrowed focus, your brain kind of goes, oh yeah, I mean, it's hard to know, you know?
do you find that most of these certifications require a fee, either one-time, annual, or do you
Almost
just-
all third parties do. They can't really function as a certifier without it, but almost all of them do, yeah. Now, the model with the government has been, technically the government doesn't certify you, there's independent certifiers that go out and do it, and then you're paying them. But yes, all of them you have to pay for, which is somewhat a good thing because there's commitment there. Some are more than others. You know what you're gonna do. Okay. So, in terms of getting your staff going on this, what do you feel like you need to do next? Now, obviously, you guys are here, but what would you perceive as the next steps for your organization to get this messaged out?
Well, we just got the audit back, so I think it's really reviewing that
Good,
would be our next step.
great, good. And for some of the others?
We have a lot of people who have cards that are allowed to purchase things for various whatever they need,
Good.
and just kind of getting the message out that you are purchasing for Spark Fund, and Spark Fund would like you to be sustainable would be good.
Good.
Even if it's just like, I needed some paper clips, so I bought some paper clips, like that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
It would be good to know.
Plastic or metal?
there you go. So here are the barriers I run up against, and so I kind of see it as levels. First level is just guidelines, right? Just having some clarity of you as an organization, of your commitment, and some of the things we talked about, just having guidelines. Then it's looking at who has literally a credit card, who has authority to purchase. And then if it's just a couple people, then it's looking at how you educate them on that. If it's more than that, then I like to even go more hone in of what types of things are those people doing. Because we don't need to give them this, we just need to give them this. And so I find in the sustainability world that if you give too much information, people get glossed over, right? I hear the sustainability, yeah, they're glossed over, right? And so the more that you can pinpoint it to them, meaning certain purchasing, like for you, Sarah, in certain areas, what do those people need to know? And maybe you have like a special handout just for that department and what they're looking for, and you get a little more specific. So it's kind of starting broad and then getting specific if you have certain areas. And I find them messaging to that team has a little bit more effect. It's not so broad they don't know how to apply it. Make sense? And I think for you, Bob, you're small enough. I think it's the key people that are purchasing, but for you, I think for you, the broad and what you're wanting them to look at, because it's not tons of purchases, that might be just one for you guys.
I think we should fire anybody who doesn't agree with it.
Let's get him out of here, okay? Get him out of Boulder, that's right.
You bought a what? Get out.
You got what? Okay, so a couple follow-up, and again, you're gonna get a copy of this. 5 Winds did another really good sustainable purchasing guide and outline, so I thought they did a good job on that. There's the Green Office Guide. That's another one that goes a little bit more into detail in terms of office products. Green Purchase Opportunities, another good one on supplier and purchasing guidelines. And then to me, this, Sarah, when you were talking, I go to this all the time. It's kind of like the eco-label index directory. So anything I'm not sure of, I just go type it in and figure out what it is. And so it's made my life easier too, to try to figure that out. Yeah. So you'll get a copy of those, but those are just some added resources for that. And then my quote from our lovely friend here, shopping is politics, you go there anytime you spend money. So part of this, we've talked on a company and business level, but that framework, when we start re-educating people on how to make decisions, that applies to their personal life too, right? And so just as you start getting them to think about how do I purchase the company's money, well, how do I want to spend my money? Because I really do believe in this capitalist market. What we buy, right, is how we're starting to say what we want. And when we shop differently, it sends a message to our manufacturers about what we want. So I